Well, welcome back, everybody, to Mindful Mondays with Laura Cross, where we are your resource for education, connection, and collaborations to support you on your wellness journey. And I want to start by thanking my sponsors, Sarah Stockham, White Sands Premier Travel, BAM Metrics, and Vibe, because without these sponsored appearances, Mindful Mondays would not be possible. So thank you. Now, you have probably seen my beautiful guest as she is the host of Simply Sarah TV show, and I am truly honored to have you as part of Mindful Mondays. But Sarah Stockham, she is not only a dynamic host, but she is also a respected Reiki Master and teacher, and she empowers individuals to harness the transformative benefits of Reiki to combat stress hormones and cultivate inner peace. And she is here to help you go from stressed to best. So, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Laura, it is such a delight to be here with you, and your intro is beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you. So, can you tell me what inspired you to be a Reiki master and teacher?
In about 2008, I was going through a lot of things as other people were financially. In addition to that, my father had been diagnosed soon after that with what turned out to be a terminal disease. Very unexpected. He'd lived a very, very healthy life. And in addition to that, then, so we had the financial things going on. We had where my husband's company, he took a 60% pay cut. It was truly a time in our life that I learned so much through, and it opened so many doors. But it took a lot of resilience to every morning get up and put the feet on the ground and go, okay, we're going to do this again today, because there wasn't an end point out there where I could say, if I just make it 6 more months, I'll be okay. It wasn't like that at all. And then I also began to have some medical issues show up for me. And some of them were hereditary, like my dad, thyroid, but it was surprising how it showed up. And then I was told, just take this medication. I had surgery. I take this medication, you're going to feel great. And I didn't. And so I was really, I was looking. I was not in a great place. I was still continuing to teach full time, and that took all of my energy. And I was putting up big Post-its to remind myself to make sure that I was paying bills on time, that I was getting groceries. I mean, things that just weren't things that I had to normally do in my life. I was needing to do just to keep myself going. And in that space, a few years prior to this, had somebody live with us. She was not a foreign exchange student in the traditional way of saying that. But the parents knew that I had grown up as a missionary kid in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and they had taken their 3-year-old daughter to live in Japan. And they were like, she needs to have an American experience. You guys get it to some degree. Can she come live with you? For a semester, she lived with us. And on Wednesday mornings, I couldn't take her to school because it was a late start in that particular school district for the high school kids. And so a neighbor, Beth Meisner, would come and pick her up from BNI, Business Networking International, for people who know that particular group. Beth would come and pick up Stacia in the morning and take her. Beth then later on opened up a book club, and she reached out to me and said, Sarah, I'd love to have you come. And anything that Beth touched, she has since transitioned, but anything that she touched was so remarkable, and I knew that I wanted to be there for the book club. And as we are reading the very first book, and I've gone back to this book to look for this particular passage or what triggered this part of the conversation, and I haven't found it. We were reading Rob Bell's Love Wins. The conversation moved extensively into meditation, and people around this grand table had phenomenal experiences where they had paid $20,000 to go away for a period of time and have complete silence except for a little bit of murmuring at dinner time, where they'd spend days upon days in meditation. And they're sharing these experiences. And in my naivete, I just said, how do you guys get to this place where you can see your thoughts just floating by like clouds? Because my brain's like a freight train. I have ideas going on all of the time. And it's really helpful for me to pull out pieces of paper, different colors, and write down different colors of pens and pencils and markers, and just make lists of things that then become very easy checkoff lists for me. And so that's been my way, or had been up to that point, my way of kind of calming some of the conversation, getting a little bit more streamlined and useful. And somebody in that group was a Reiki master. And because Beth said Janice Birkenhager does Reiki, and I've had Reiki with her, I knew Beth. I knew I could trust her.
Mm-hmm.
Now she's saying you can trust this person. So I went and had a 15-minute experience sitting in a chair. And Janice, had her hands on my head and would tap different places. And maybe she was breathing. I don't know. I was just sitting in the chair with my eyes closed. But Laura, that night I went home and I slept the best that I had in 4 years. And at the time we were living in Southern California, I was driving up the coast up to Santa Maria, going through Santa Barbara, and just felt inspired to stop and watch the ocean.
Oh.
And I knew as I watched the ocean that whatever had happened in that chair in 15 minutes had radically changed how I'd slept, and that I felt really, really calm and at peace. And whatever it was, I wanted to learn more about it. So that was my story as I came into the world of Reiki and took all the different levels. It took me a while to Reiki 1 and 2 made sense to me because Reiki is hands on, no symbols. Reiki 2 is distance, you use some symbols. I could wrap my brain around that. As you move into the upper levels of Reiki, using the advanced Reiki techniques, you begin using gemstones, you can, crystals. And with my background and my upbringing, I was like, I don't know. And I remember sitting one morning in my quiet time and looking at what I was reading and realized that Moses' brother Aaron had been they were told to create an ephod for him to wear that had the 12 different stones on it. It wasn't that they were worshiping the stones were just showing the different properties, the different ways. And when I read that, I was just like, oh, I can do this. I can go on and do other things. I can use crystals if I want to. I don't need to, but I can learn more, I can do more, I can go deeper into this practice. So I went all the way through mastery. Janice then was relocating out of the state, had some people who wanted to take classes, and as a trained teacher, she said, Sarah, you've got this. Here's the manual. You figure out how to teach this information. This is how I've done it. Here is, some of the syllabi that she had. And I invested a deep amount of time of learning the information and then figuring out how to best share it with others. And the home that we lived in had a beautiful space for being able to teach in the living room. Had a gorgeous wall that had rocks all over it. It had come that way. The house had been built with that beautiful rock wall. Um, People prior to with us living there had different groups come in, different high school kids from a private school. And just as a side note, one night, um, a very famous rock musician came and knocked on the door in the evening, and we were like, what are you doing here? And limo in the street, the whole thing. And he said, I just wanted to pop in and see if the rock wall was still here. I used to play drums here, and we would put candles on the rock wall. And so it was just such an incredible experience. So back to the story of being able to teach and seeing this transformation that wasn't happening just in my life, but was happening for other people as well. And that was what absolutely got me into space of saying, I want more of that. I want to be able to help more people be able to look at their lives and say, I have perhaps a really good life, and yet there's this undercurrent in my life that keeps me from feeling steady and stable and calm. And so reaching out for that, wanting that, moving in towards that. And so that's what got me going. And then I was reading from the International Center for Reiki Training that the president of that was going to be teaching in the Hawaiian Islands. I was going to be on another island, a sister island at the same time. My love said, you need to just change islands, just go island hop and go take the classes. And so I did that. And then also, so I took classes in Maui, starting from the very beginning all over again, hearing it with very different ears, experiencing it differently, and then also going all the way through mastery and Karuna with him, both in Michigan and then also in Southern California. And so it's been an incredible journey and one I'm just so grateful for.
Yeah, and that is an incredible story. And like you said, if I remember right, 2008 was, I think, our housing crash
Mhm.
time, and it created a lot of stress for a lot of people. And
Yes,
we control stress the best we can, but
right.
life always is going to throw. It's never going to be completely gone, but at least you have found a way to help be able to control that
Mhm.
and come above it and be your best. Can you back up maybe a little bit and
Sure.
explain to people who don't know what is Reiki?
Such a great question. I had never heard of the word before that book club morning. It's a compound word in Japanese. So Rei is going to mean shepherd. It's going to mean great spirit. It's going to be source outside of ourselves, but yet that we're connected to. And then Ki is going to be the energy that we're connecting into. So some people will talk about, they've heard the word Chi. So it's going to be a very similar process of that. So it's not a religion. It is a space where when somebody is attuned, and we had, this made sense to me, attunement did, because we had a baby grand piano. And if it got out of tune, somebody would come and they'd play 440. And they would find A and they would begin to tune it to 440, the vibration, and then they would tune from there, right? So
Mhm.
the idea of tuning something that was out of tune but capable of being in tune completely made sense to me. And so this space of attunement then just means that um, that somebody who is connected in with this healing energy passes it on, shares it, opens up the way for it for the next person. I made a quick Kleenex. I'll be right back.
You bet. Yeah,
With
and
apologies. So,
I like how you call that attunement too. You're okay. I like
yes,
how you call that attunement also, because there's so many people that aren't familiar with vibration and frequency or energy. Even though we are all made of it, we're all surrounded of it every day. It's not something that's taught in that way in schools, at least not when I was growing up.
right, right. And it was something that made sense to me also because living in the Democratic Republic of Congo, growing up there, we would use shortwave radios. So I remember being very young and talking to my dad, and how does this work and why does it work? And him showing me the antenna and how important that was. And so just understanding also those kinds of things that we use in everyday life. Maybe we think of it now as more of a Wi-Fi, that if I don't have the password to the Wi-Fi, I can't connect into that particular system. But if somebody gives me the password, then I have access in. And I get to decide how often I want to use that particular password to access that particular Wi Fi. And so anybody can be trained in Reiki. Um, the personal journey, the growth happens when we commit to learning. We commit to opening our eyes. We commit to coming across things that we don't necessarily understand and wouldn't have necessarily understood prior to Reiki, and coming into that space of um, just international events happening. Let's use that, right? Not understanding why it's happening. And yet now I feel like I have something that I can do in those moments. I have something that I can do that's positive, that's worthwhile, that's helpful for the people who are there if they're willing to receive this beautiful healing energy. And so it for me has transformed how I watch television, how I hear conversations at a big box store, things that before I felt as somebody who some people would say an empath. I prefer the word sensitive. As
Mhm.
an empath, I'm sitting at the end of the fire hose taking in all of the energy and I can't control it. As a sensitive, I get to feel the energy and decide what I want to dance in with, what I want to be responding to. And so, in that space, then it gives me so much more, a deeper toolkit to be able to use, so many more tools to be able to move into that space and be able to help other people. And then it just also gives me that feeling of knowing that there is something I can do. There's somebody that I love deeply who is nearing 90 and doesn't have these skills yet. Maybe at some point, who knows? But in that space, just listening to the despair as she listens to the news. And that used to be me. And that no longer is me, because I know that there is something that I can be doing to help raise the consciousness, that can be help to send the healing that helps the people who are going into devastated areas after earthquakes, to help them increase the immunity in their system, to help the dogs that go also looking, right, for survivors. And so I feel like I have something that I can actually do that's positive when I hear news that before would be very crushing.
Well, I have to say, I am very glad that you have shared all of this, because I am too. I was always told I was too sensitive all my life, and I realized that I am sensitive. And like you said, whether you want to call it a sensitive or an empath, but like you, I get very heady and have 10 million things going in my head. So I now know that there is hope for me, because that is things I have been trying to tap into myself as well. And it does take being more open and stuff. But I guess sometimes when you want it to come, it's like maybe not necessarily coming right away. It's probably still being forced rather than just. So yes, you definitely provide hope for us that are very heady, and but know that there's something else out there. We have, I think, some very similarities there. So how can you tell us, how does Reiki specifically combat like stress hormones in a person's
Mhm. That's such a great question. If I can talk a little bit about what stress is
body? Mhm.
and how it impacts our body, and then I'll come back to answering that part of it. Um, when there is stressful stimuli, the stressful stimuli is not for everybody, it's for the individual. So, what causes me to feel stressed, the person right next to me on the airplane can feel or see or smell or whatever, exactly the same thing, but they're going to have a different response to my response. My response is mine. So, the stimuli is going to be out there, things are happening, and yet the individual response to that is going to be different. Now, we have this beautiful 10-second window from a resting heart rate. Now, a resting heart rate means that I'm sitting, right? It's not that I'm
Mhm.
out and I've been out running for a while, because that's going to be different. But from a resting heart rate, the point that I hear or smell or see taken any kind of stimuli that causes me to go, ooh, I'm tensing up, we have a beautiful 10-second window to be able to do something different, to talk to our brain rather than having our brain go into the catecholamine effect. And the catecholamine, when we go into fight or flight, is that they stay in our body. So it takes the sugar and the salts and the waters and pushes all of those into the middle of our being so that we can go fight or we can flee away from the saber-toothed tiger. The problem is that irritating sound of whatever it happens to be is not a saber-toothed tiger. It's just an irritating sound for me.
Mhm.
And my response to it, if I don't talk to my brain and say, hey, we're okay, is going to be the same as a saber-toothed tiger chasing after me. And so what goes out then, what has been stripped, has to come back in. And that's going to be the glucocorticoids. And we think, oh, that's great. All of it's coming back to the places it's supposed to go, the fats, the sugars, the waters, salts, everything is going back to where it needs to be. That's great, except for it makes us feel uh, anxious about things because we have all this energy that's floating around. If it happens in the middle of the night, we wake up and have insomnia. And the interesting thing, and I've talked to people who've done deep research and read deep research about this, and their response is because men had to go to war. Whatever your response is, that's fine. But men move from uh, the catecholamine effect into the glucocorticoids. They do that turnaround in 9 hours. Women, it's 24 hours. So if you stress and then re-stress and then re-stress, you can be in a constant battle of where am I inside of this response to all of that. So the whole idea then of the course that I created, From Stress to Best, or taking Reiki, or learning meditation, all these different kinds of tools that people will say these work, and they all work in different ways. And different people will have different responses to them, grounding being another one of those. All of them are helping us talk to our body, bringing our body into a place where our heart rate is maybe even lower, potentially giving us even more time. And then in the course From Stress to Best, we teach different tools that we can use to talk to our brain in order to be able to say, yeah, I'm annoyed, but I don't need to go there. I'm just annoyed. I don't need to have all of those stress chemicals be dancing throughout my body, because it really does become a cocktail of stress chemicals, right? It's not just one or two, it's a lot of them.
It's a lot. Yeah.
A lot. And so in that space, then being able to have things that we can do to say. And I use Reiki in so many different ways of starting my morning and coming into the day. And how do I want to feel today? How do I want to feel when I'm showing up for different experiences? How did I want to feel when I came in and joined you in studio today? Those kinds of things are really, really helpful to be able to put the baseline in for this is what I'm looking for, knowing full well, eyes wide open, that life is going to happen, and that's okay.
Yeah. That's a really good point, and I love that. And I appreciate you. I know men and women always handled things differently. I had no idea it took women, but I guess for me it kind of makes sense. 24 hours, and why we can stay in that. And then you have the cortisol, which a lot of us carry around our
Right,
stomach, which we hate and trying to get rid of. Right? It's a
right.
constant, constant cycle.
And we want cortisol first thing in the morning. It's a natural way that we wake up. We want it then. We just don't want it all the time. And so, learning different things that we can do can be radically helpful in changing our communication with other people, our relationships. It can change how we look at a project. I am not naturally a techie. In fact, I came to you to say, hey, can you show me some of the tips and tips that you know about using EV Mux, which I absolutely love, but love you even more for saying, Sarah, of course, let's do this. How helpful that has been. But in those spaces of things that I might go in the past, this was super stressful for me, but now I'm open to the possibility of showing up differently and having a different result. And just that alone is so freeing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, so we have a lot more to cover, and I'm sure you can help give people tips of how they even start with this kind of practice when they're new to it. But we got to take a quick break from a word from our sponsors, and we will be right back.
Perfect.
Hi, I'm Bobby Aldridge with BAM Metrics. There are so many programs out there that measure your swing speed, sets, reps, your BMI, your body fat, but the one thing they're not measuring that's so essential is mobility. Mobility is the key. If you're measuring your mobility, your performance will get better and you will reduce your pain. I created BAM Metrics to make it easy for people to repeat the exercises so they could do it properly at home on their own. It's simple, it's easy to do, and from a senior to a pro athlete.
Relief for PTSD, anxiety, pain, insomnia, and many other ailments. Introducing Vibe, the world's only pocket PEMF device. You place in your pocket while cooking, cleaning, relaxing, watching TV, sitting at your computer, reading, or walking. Self-contained standalone device. No drugs. No other phone or Bluetooth connections required. No monthly subscription fees. No apps to download. No Bozone. The future of medicine is in the frequencies. Come join the revolution.
So, Sarah, how can somebody new to Reiki begin to incorporate that in their life?
I think who you choose, first of all, as a teacher, I invite people to have conversations with them, with that person, to make sure that that's a really good fit in terms of personality, in terms of what you see in the lifestyle of the person who's potentially going to be your teacher. I also invite you, I know that we're doing so much virtually and it's lovely and wonderful, but Reiki can also be done virtually. And I do invite the person to have, just as a place of learning, to have a Reiki session, if possible, from that person. Again, just learning in that space, right? Every single Reiki session is going to be different, and they all compound. So what you receive in the first one, what you release energetically that you're carrying in the unseen world, in that biofield that some people call an aura around us, extending out 10 feet or so, getting that cleaned up, allowing our body to move into a place that we are breathing deeper, that we are breathing wider. Those things will help. And it'll also help you know if this is the right person for you to take Reiki from. And like I shared, I've taken Reiki all the way through with Janice Birkenhager, and then I took it all the way through with another teacher. And so being open to learn from different people, I think, is also something that many, many people are very receptive to. So after you learn, I'm going to go back to that just a little bit more.
Mhm.
With Reiki, some people will teach Reiki 1 by itself. In my experience, I've done that twice, and I don't plan to ever do that again. I always do Reiki 1 and 2 together. Reiki 1 is hands-on, and then Reiki 2 is being able to do distance. And in Reiki 2, you get 3 symbols. There is something that happens in the space of having more conversations, of hearing more stories, of watching more people getting the opportunity to do more, that really helps move the mind from, oh, I went and did that in a weekend, to, oh, this is something that I can apply throughout my life, in different places in my life, and maybe get to the point where I'm using it in all areas of my life. And so for me, one of the things is, it's going to sound very perhaps non-intuitive, but I take everything that's on my phone and my calendar, all the invites, everything that I've gotten in there. And on Sunday afternoon, I spend about 15 minutes. I hand write out the week. It sounds so old school. However, it's incredibly powerful because for me, I am setting my energetic intentions for the week while I do that. And it's allowing my brain to think through, oh, I have several things back to back there. Maybe I need to look at my day a little bit more intently on how my energy is going to be, differently than if I were going to be outside in my sweats gardening all the day long, right?
Right.
So just the mindset, again, of that. It's not that I don't have a mindset when I go out gardening. It's just a different type of mindset than if I'm going to be in studio or having conversations with different people. So writing it out has been very, very helpful. When we take our pen to paper, and there's just something that happens inside of our brain. So you're going to notice that all the things that I'm talking about, whether it be Reiki or EMDR, which I've also done, I don't do it for other people, but I have been a receptive person to that. Eye movement desensitizing and reprocessing, which is used for people who have gone through very, very stressful experiences, potentially people who've had EMDR. I loved that you were showing in the advertisements that possibility of bringing the waves in a different way, having it in the pocket.
Mhm.
All of these different things are working with our frequencies, working with our brain. When we do meditation, the whole intent of meditation is to change our brain frequency into ones that move slower and easier. Perhaps delta, perhaps theta, depending on what you're working for. So in that space, we are looking at how we start our week. And then as you look at all the things that you've written out, how do you want to feel as you're coming into those things? How do you want to be showing up? That doesn't mean that you're going to get the contract. It doesn't mean that other people are going to be happy with you all day long. It's not about others. You are looking at yourself, understanding that self-care is not selfish. It's the most important thing that we can do in order to make sure that our instrument in this beautiful celestial orchestra is tuned. And so that when we are showing up for ourselves and for others, we are showing up at our very, very highest level, our highest ability to be able to impact the world for good. And I don't know about all of the listeners, but Laura, I know that your heart is there, that you are intentional about impacting the world for good.
Oh yes, yeah, and 100%. And that's one of the reasons why I like doing these things, because how many times have we heard that self care is selfish? But the fact of the matter really is if you don't take care of yourself, how are you going to keep helping others and pour out? You can't,
Yeah,
right?
right. And so that's why I teach Reiki 1 and 2 together, because I want people to have more time talking with others, more experiences, because that helps the mind move past well, now that we're in our space, that's not going to work here, right? And
Right.
so having more experiences, staying a part of a community, finding other people who are like-minded. It doesn't mean that they are like-minded in all areas of life, but in the idea that you have things that you can talk about, a place that you can ask questions. And then as you are listening to the answers, listen to your intuition. I was going to say be vigilant, but that's a little too perhaps strong, but use your intuition to lean into how the person is answering the question, because they are answering it from their experiences, and perhaps you haven't had those experiences. So for me, I will sometimes hear songs when I'm doing Reiki. For somebody else, even for myself, I will see colors. Sometimes every now and then I'll smell different things. I will have knowingness that will happen just in the middle of the day. There are times where I think about somebody and I know when I hear their name that I need to send them Reiki. Those are my experiences. Those aren't necessarily my sister's experience. And we are 100% biologically from the same parents, right?
Right.
So, just even inside of that, then um, listen to how other people, be open to hearing. Because I just discounted in the beginning, of course, people can hear things, of course, they can see things. And then also going back to the gifts that you had as a child, so often people who are empaths or sensitives had gifts that other people would um, try to squash, try to say, that's not acceptable here, or you can't really be able to do that. And if we listen to them, that begins to muffle our ears to how we take in the energy. And as Leon Kolowski says, it just begins to dampen the light. You know, that every single one of our pores has light coming out of it, and these strings of light, and they can become dampened, they can become tangled up. And those things can happen if we are taking in information from other people, whether they are people that we know, we hear it in a radio broadcast, we hear it someplace else. It can make us feel smaller. And so being in that space of having people that we can have conversations with that are uplifting, places that we can go, that we can ask questions, and to know also that there are seasons for things. When we were in Southern California, I had a monthly in-person Reiki, and sometimes we were setting up 3-4 different tables with 3 to 4 different people at every single table, and we'd put a timer on. We'd do a together part in the beginning and get kind of centered, and then we divide into tables, and we would say, 1 more minute, and then that minute would be up, and we have about 3 to 5 minutes for people who were giving Reiki to talk to the person who'd been receiving, and if they wanted to, and then the next person would get on the table. We had a rotation system that worked really, really well. And then we came into the shutdown, and so we tried doing things online, and it wasn't the same, and people were really missing that in person. So as soon as we get together, that we were allowed to be in the backyard, we began setting up under the stars, and did some things in order to be able to do that. And more blankets, all the different things. And then we were able to come back in person. That was lovely. And then I knew that Spirit was taking me on a new education experience. And so we relocated across the country to help be with my mom, help care for her. And I had offered several different times doing at different points a online Reiki circle, online Reiki group, maybe once a month. Maybe I'd offer it, at the changing of the seasons. And it really wasn't jiving. I was part of the reason it wasn't jiving, because we were so deeply in the process of the relocation, of coming to the house that my grandparents built, and needing to work on the house, needing to work on the land, building vegetable gardens and flower gardens. And so we've been here for 21 months or so at this point, and just recently offered a welcome spring, and it was incredibly well received. So again, that space of just because it's works really, really well in one capacity, and not all of the people who were regulars in person came to the one online. That's okay. Uh, just being open, offering, and for the people that are supposed to be there, they show up and they are there. And that has been always something that for me has been really important. I am happy to offer. I'm happy to clean the energy, get the space ready, do the invitations, do the advertising. And I'm also okay if nobody shows up because it's my spiritual education, it's my spiritual path, right?
Right.
And love that when people do come, love when there's so much energy. And after this one that we just did, someone the next day reached out that same day, and we got together the next day and had a further conversation of, oh, let's take this particular part about so many people are relocating. And whether you are the person who's being nudged to move, or you are the person who is knowing that others are moving and that you are being called to stay, what's that energy about? Can we have a conversation about that? So we have something coming up really soon. Everybody that I texted who came to the Welcome Spring is like, yeah, 2 feet in, of course I'm going to be there. And I know that there'll be other people. Part of our group lost homes during the fires in Southern California, and they have had to relocate. And I think that we'll have more people come in for that conversation as well, if it works into their schedule. And so just being open to that.
Right. And it's such a beautiful space. I love that you've, created that. And it brings up to mind because it's like when we moved from Colorado to Missouri, I couldn't really explain it. I just knew we didn't like the way the state was headed, and I knew in my heart of hearts it was time to go. And that was about the only way I could explain it to my fiance, because he didn't think I would ever move from there. And I'm like,
Right.
it's just our time. We need to go. So it's kind of incredible. Now, you mentioned symbols, like 3 symbols. What are those symbols that you're referring to?
They are symbols that help. We don't, in the lineage that I'm in, we don't post them online. We don't share them. I'll talk briefly about them. There are other lineages that go back to Japan as well, that people will say, oh, yeah, we'll post everything and we'll share it all. There's a level of respect is the reason that we don't. So
Gotcha.
there's one that's about asking the energy to concentrate and to work specifically on whatever the issue happens to be, whether you're with the person or you're doing it distance virtually. There's another one that has to do with balancing, and that can be balancing left and right hemispheres of our brain. That can be balancing how we're carrying the energy. That can be balancing work and home life, or interpersonal relationships and family relationships, right? It can be about balancing all kinds of different things. And then the third one is going to be because Earth has this constraint that we have 2 things, time and space. And those are things that are very, very earthbound. And so this third one then deals with that, which allows then the space of being able to do distance Reiki. You don't need to be in a particular area in order to be able to send love and support and encouragement and helping people to be able to see what it is that they need that might be different than what they thought that they needed to be able to get through something.
Yeah, it's really an incredible practice. I've met a few people that are overseas in other countries and stuff that do that, and yet they can still feel and still, like you said, help others to heal and go through. So it's an incredible practice. You also mentioned meditation. Can you explain a little bit about the connection between meditation and stress prevention?
Yes. So for people who are still kind of wondering a little bit more about what Reiki is a cousin to meditation. So prior to Reiki, I had not been able to sit quietly and listen to a meditation. I was fidgety. I was like, ants crawling on my skin kind of feeling. Reiki really moved that from that to just allowing my brain to go someplace that was quiet, that was focused as people were working on me. And once I had that experience, I was then able to say, this is what meditation is, or what it does, can do for some people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I am looking for. So now I can sit, and I do. I have a meditation I do in the evening that I listen to somebody else meditating. I have also created a whole monthly subscription. It's called Reiki Infused Meditations. There's, I don't know, over 80 at this point meditations in there, which again, it's about infusing the two of those pieces together. Your question was about Reiki and meditation, correct?
Well, and the connection between meditation and stress prevention.
Beautiful. So the space there then is, again, you talked about frequencies. We have these frequencies that are going through our brain, and different levels, different, widths of them, different highs and lows of them. And the idea of doing a meditation for stress prevention is to move us to a space where our heart is lowering its blood pressure, and that we were also then allowing the brain to move to a place that is quieter. For me, it becomes a place also that can become very, very creative. I'm not necessarily seeking answers to things,
Mm-hmm.
but by moving into that space, so often either the answer will just show up in that space, or it will show up a little bit later. You're smiling, so I think you maybe have had a similar situation.
I was telling you a little bit because the other day I was messing with Evie Mux or whatever. And before I have spent hours like trying to rack and follow videos. And all of a sudden I tried to customize it in this 2-minute video. And it's like all of a sudden it just poof, clicked. And I'm like, oh, I was making this way harder than, than it needed to be. And I was like, that was actually quite easy. So yeah, it's amazing when you get a chance to relax or get that calm or the whole new perspective, how things, like you said, answers will just pop up, or,
Yes.
it's, yeah, that's what it was reminding me of, because that was just recent. So that just like popped in my head. I was like, yeah, I can't even tell you how long that I avoided it because I thought it was it was so taxing. And then all of a sudden, yesterday, I was like, well, okay, that's actually pretty easy.
Different people have had different ways of getting to that space. Einstein would come across a problem and he would say to his mind, this is what I'm working on. So he's setting the intention. He would go and pick up his violin and he would just sit and play. So he's doing something tactily. He's focused on music. He is becoming absorbed in the music, but he's giving his brain something to work on while he's doing that. And so often the next step would open up for him, or even the next multiple steps. And so he's just somebody that we know the name of and we go, oh yeah, genius, and wow, all these different things that he talked about, or that he says, really close to understanding. And that was one of the ways that he would get his answer. The other thing that he would do, he loved Palm Springs, that he would go out hiking. And again, setting the intention and then just going out and enjoying the space of walking and taking in the sun. He would wear his boots and not a lot more than that. He wanted the sun on his skin as he was out, walking and taking all of it in. And part of that, I think, is also because of places that he had lived that were so cold. When you get to a place that has good sun, we were recently in Sedona, and I was like, oh, this just feels so good, right? So,
Yeah.
to enjoy that, yes.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny too. I think part of it too is the more intuitives and energy healers and stuff that I've worked with, I've always heard the name Joe Dispenza a lot.
Yes.
And he had popped up on my YouTube feed. So when I was going down the other day, I was actually listening to his YouTube channel, and he talked about when you get up in the morning, don't be grabbing your phone first, or just, flat out start your morning by saying today is going to be a great day. It's going to go well, blah, 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 and set that intention, which is kind of what I, had in my mind. And then of course the thing with the email, it's just popped up. I'm like, wow. Okay. So yeah, it's kind of incredible how the universe and all of that works. But yeah, what misconceptions have you come up against with people when it comes to Reiki?
There is a religious organization that has said Reiki is not good. And yet there are people inside of that religious organization that have different orders, and that you can go to places. I'm thinking of in Santa Barbara. There are places in Chicago, let's say Illinois, where there are people who said, yeah, that may be the church's stance, but we have experienced it differently and we know it to be differently. So I'm really, really careful when I come into having conversations with people, because there may be some space of resistance, and that's okay. My job is not to convert anybody to anything at all. My job is to say, if you want to have a conversation about this, we can do that. What I have found to be the most helpful, and this took me a while to figure this out, was for people to come and have an experience. It's actually my husband who said, Reiki is like peace. It's really, really hard to explain it to somebody who has never experienced it. And in that moment, the light bulbs went off, and I was like, oh, of course, people need to experience this. And so often, when we did the Reiki shares in person, I would invite other people, if you want to come, and you can leave at any point. We're not locking the door.
Right. We're not locking the doors behind you.
Right. We're a friendly group of primarily it was women. Every now and then we'd have a man come and join us, usually a brother or somehow connected in with the group. But if you are open, if you can say to yourself, in the past, this is how I have dealt with stress, and I have been awake in the night, I have felt awful, as you talked about cortisol bringing in over time that layer of fat subcutaneously in the lower abdominal area. It can come also up to the shoulders, Cushing's disease. There can be so many other responses in our body to stress, and how our body tries so hard to help us move forward. Our body's doing everything that it knows to do to help us move forward. And so if you know that in the past, this has been your response, this has been what you have gotten out of that, becoming open to the possibility of something else. And that's why I say coming into a place with a conversation with somebody can be really, really helpful. I know that I was talking to somebody recently about a different practice, and I had questions. I having grown up in the Democratic Republic of Congo, I have seen witch doctors. I have seen, and in so many ways, they were also the people who had the medicine to heal others. I know that our Western doctors went and sat with, this would have been in the late 50s, early 60s, sat with the witch doctors to say, teach me how you are making whatever this is that helps people who had cuts, help clean the cut. In essence, they were asking, how do you make alcohol, out of the jungle? And so they were also seen with that. But there was also this aspect to the witch doctor that would come by from the tribe that I was with, that I was growing up with, that he wouldn't bathe because that would wash off all of the powers. And so if somebody has had an experience like I did as a child of that person looks scary, and I tried to hide every time that he would come by, just because it was just so scary for me as a child. And my dad would go out to meet him and have conversations. And and I remember being up behind my dad and, just trying to hide. And if people have had experiences like that, where they have seen things that have made them be really, really uncomfortable, and are aware that there's other types of energies out there, it's really wise, again, to have conversations and get your questions answered, to know if this is for you or not. Some people who are very scientifically minded may say, can't do that, but can't do Reiki at this point, but I am willing to try EMDR. And what I will say about EMDR, having had a client who was at Vegas Strong and had done EMDR, had been a client before it and was a client afterwards. And she said, it didn't do much for me. And, Reiki has been so much more helpful. And so each person's going to find their own space. I also think that, like anything, the person who was doing the EMDR, that needs to be a good match as well. And so, again, um, in our relocation, we began looking for doctors in this area and, asked family members. And when we made appointments and went in, we were asking questions. Where are you on the spectrum of a whole bunch of different things? Just wanting to know. And I think in this as well, it's just wise to be asking questions. You wouldn't buy a house or a car, or you wouldn't invest in anything else without having an idea of what you wanted in the end of it,
Right.
how you wanted to feel. And to me, every time that I have Reiki, I'm paying somebody else, I'm investing in myself. And so there's something that I am wanting, right? There's something that I am desiring. And so to come into connection with that, to come into, and then to feel that space of intuition, is this the right place, to follow the nudge?
Yeah. And I love that. Sarah, we have 3 minutes left. I know you and I could go on go
Yes,
on forever. Um, so you have your Simply Sarah TV show. I've got your YouTube channel up.
thank you.
Um, and so and thank you very much for having me on there. But what would you like people to know about you, your YouTube channel, or your TV show?
If you are listening to Laura and you are in a place of um, really appreciating the guests that she's been bringing in and talking to, I think that you will find some of those similar kinds of conversations taking place on the YouTube television, the YouTube playlist. There's one for Simply Sarah. You can do it as a podcast if you want to just be listening in. But there are also ones in their playlist for Reiki Claremont if you're interested in more about Reiki. So there's a lot of information out there. And if you are feeling the nudge to go and look, we invite you to do that. And as Laura would also encourage you to be, for her channel on YouTube, to be liking, to be subscribing, it does make a difference. And so we just so appreciate you as the audience listening in and gifting us the time. And our desire has been to elevate your life and to make your life better.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like you said, like and subscribe, to both our channels. I always tell people, I said, none of this is a competition. It's a collaboration, and together we can do more. So I know I greatly appreciate everybody's support. What is the best way for them to get a hold of you? The sarahstockham.com or reiki.com?
Either one of those, sarahstockham.com is a place where they can easily write me a note and it'll go right to me. Reiki Claremont is going to give them a lot more information about Reiki. And so if they're interested in that, they can go there and look as well.
Wonderful. Sarah, thank you so much for taking the time with us today and sharing all of that and clarifying more things about Reiki, because it is something I've still been learning too. But I greatly appreciate your time and your knowledge and for sharing all of that with us today. Thank you.
I have loved this time with you, Laura. Thank you so much. It's good to see you, friend.
Thank you. You too. And everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And we will see you again next week.